The space is dark, but for the shadowy outline of a woman center stage. She is wearing a white dress that wraps around and around her body, fabric fanning out at her feet into a brilliant wide white circular orb of light. She's turning, almost imperceptibly slowly, the dress wrapping, tightening, slowly reducing the orb of fabric around her feet. The fanned out orb of fabric is white, and rippling images are projected onto it. Rippling white, silver, grey, blue against the shadowy folds of the dress. As she turns, her own shadow casts a long black line against the dress. As she turns, the orb looks like rippling water. As she turns and more of the dress is binding around her body, we see the shape of her body more clearly. The light dims. And grows dark. The white orb of the fabric shows dark, slow ripples and goes out. Darkness. The lights come up again on the woman in the dress. Dimly, images are projected onto her, onto the fanned out orb of her dress at her feet. Branches, the sky, images of sky, branches shiver shadowy in the dress folds with her constant movement. Close-up of the fanned fabric of the orb, the woman's body rising out of it, and shivering leaves, branches against a blue, ripply sky. The light changes. This image is almost of trees in summertime, golden yellows and bright greens, of leaves trembling. The lights grow dim again to almost darkness. By now the orb is reduced, its fabric almost fully absorbed into a tight spiral binding around the woman's body. As she continues to turn slowly. Now her turning has bound the dress all around her body, from her neck all the way down to her ankles. The dress has consumed her. Tightly, the dress, like so many bandages, consuming the figure, winding round and round and round. The light change, again back to the summer. And the trees, and a light change again to darker. Now the woman stands, the outline of her body clear, in the binding of the dress all the way down. we see a close-up of her. She has long black hair and a fringe. And another close-up of the dress at the woman's ankles, winding tightly around her body. Finally consumed by the dress, she crumples to the ground like a dying flower. There is golden light on the figure and the woman who's just crumpled. And the rest of the space is dark. Close-up of the woman curled on the ground in a crumple of white fabric that she's been bound into. We see movement where her feet must be. Movement as though still turning or trying to escape from the dress. In the far right corner, lights come up to reveal a group of dancers. Some are standing, some are on all fours. There is an almost view of the wheel of a wheelchair. The dancers are huddled around one dancer. She has rusty, red, long wavy hair. This is Galen. She is moving forward in a crumpling, collapsing, disintegrating movement. The huddle of dancers surround to support and lift her. Down left of the stage, the woman has wriggled free of the dress. We see the huddle of dancers in green, red, dungarees and t-shirts. They make a rippling, very slow movement across the stage. Bodies interweaving, encircling, undulating. In a dance of carrying and support. See Isolde, the dancer in a wheelchair, with rusty red long hair and wearing green. Being woven in and through the other dancers. The dancers slow in their movement to pause and then run away. Galen has finally reached the ground and she is left alone. Now Galen alone dances. Her arms whirl like windmills. They reach in flight, in desperation. They spin her over and around. Sometimes with such force they land her on the ground where she rolls, reaching up again, spinning, her arms flinging her to the ground, up again. t-shirt, flowing trousers, flinging arms, reaching, rolling. She's drawn back into darkness. Darkness. A view of the audience, part of the audience. The lights go up in the theatre and people start to file quietly out into the foyer. Foyer of greys and whites and off-whites and cement. We see a man in the corner playing a red guitar.
When my mum would drive me and my brother Axel to Derry in my grandma's house, she would reverse the car right up to the door. We'd sit in the boot and look into the kitchen. We could see Grandad warming up the heat of the range after checking all his farm animals. He had goats, hens, pigs, ducks, sheep, lambs and cattle.
This is Annalie, a dancer with fair hair, green dungarees and a white shirt.
Axel, who was sitting beside me, was cranky because he wanted to go and do all the usual jobs into his Grandad's house. Suddenly he started laughing because Twiggy had jumped onto my lap. Twiggy is Grandad's dog. She turned her head and licked my face. I could see Grandad smiling at us. We watched the rain fall until it was only a light drizzle. I gently eased Twiggy off my lap as she jumped down and ran back into the kitchen. I went to follow her, but stopped myself at the door.
Svenja enters, wearing a white flowy top and blue flowy trousers. Svenja and Anne-Marie begin to dance. A third dancer enters. It's Galen. They dance in the foyer of the theatre. There's a staircase behind them. Cement steps. They dance. Going up the stairs. It seems a dance of catch. But Amelie, the girl in the green dungarees, can never catch them. In a weaving, flowing movement, they ever evade her grasp. Sometimes it's close, but at the last second, they whirl away. Dancers are still. They move off behind the staircase and out of view. Now we see the guitarist again. A view of the outside of the dock. Unsquared paving. In front of the dock are set 3 large industrial-looking frames made of scaffolding. In the centre, in the far left, is a giant cube, approximately 5 foot. To the right of it and to the left are partially constructed frames, like broken cubes, at odd diagonal angles to the giant one. The view is out to the street. A car passes by. There is a dancer in red dungarees lying curled up on the ground. This dancer is Grace. She is a dancer with blonde hair. Another dancer with blonde hair, pale blue dungarees and a t-shirt enters. She looks at the figure in the red dungarees on the ground, drops to her knees beside her, and starts to draw a chalk square around her. dancer in red dungarees, whose name is Charlie, stands up. The square is complete. This is Grace telling her story. As she talks, another dancer in dark green dungarees enters, both of them carrying chalk. As Grace tells her story, they draw numerous chalk squares onto the ground, all sizes. Amelie and Charlie are continuing to draw chalk squares all over the concrete in front of the dock. Now they are still. Charlie and Amelie have moved over to beside the big cube while Grace dances. As well as the cube, there are old metal chairs. Grace sits on the ground inside the great metal cube, with her eyes closed and her fingers are crossed. She opens her eyes to look at Charlie and Amelie watching her, and standing up. She hovers on the cube bars before leaving it. Leaving the cube bars to chase Amelie and Charlie around the cube. They stop. Each taking a bar of the cube, they clamber up to hang upside down on the top bars of the cube. Again, the dancers chase around the cube to stop suddenly, each holding onto a horizontal bar, a vertical bar, and then moving to clamber up and hang upside down on the top bars. clamber around the top of the cube, winding their bodies easily in and around it. Now still, now moving. Now they are climbed down to the gun, and the chasing game has resumed. Charlie, in a red dungarees, stands alone in the cube. Emily and Grace have run off. She walks forward. Charlie has told her story of how she hid and sneaked as a child to the audience who sat on the steps in front of the dark. Now, turning her back to us, she has walked back to the cube and with a deft handstand, her legs wrapped around the upper bar, she slowly uncurls to sit on the far left corner of the cube. And now she climbs up again like a cat. The red jumpsuit contrasting with the stark metal of the cube and the cement of the ground underneath her. She sits on the top bar. Still. The dancer in the wheelchair, Isolde, enters. She has rolled up to the cube. Charlie uncurls from her spot on the top bar into a headstand, her shoulders supported onto Isolde's thighs. Remaining in a headstand, Isolde wheels around the side of the cube. Isolde in green, Charlie in red. As Charlie slowly snakes around, melting, swiveling out of the handstand into Isolde's cradled hold. She does not remain there though, and snakes around Isolde's back to lie on her back, her arms outstretched, bird-like. And so they roll in that formation to the front of the cube. Charlie rolls off Isolde's back into a cartwheel. They pause and look at each other. Charlie rolls back to Isolde to step on the back of her wheelchair, upright, as on the prow of a ship, and there they roll back Charlie takes hold of the bar and spinning herself underneath it. Isolde grasps the upper bars and pulling herself out of the wheelchair, she pulls herself into the metal frame of the cube. Charlie is hanging upside down from the top bar and she lifts the wheelchair into the cube, just in time for Isolde to sit back into it. Isolde arches her body backwards as Charlie arches her body backwards on the top bar of the cube, both of them bird-like. Charlie unfolds to the ground. Dancers have entered, slowly carrying the metal-framed chairs, including two that seem welded together at odd and awkward angles, which they set down on and in the cube. Another dancer, wearing a mossy green top and short black hair, enters. There are now 3 dancers in the cube. Charlie on the top bar, Isolde in her wheelchair, leaning forward, holding a metal chair, and Svenja at an angle from the top bar to the vertical. There is a commingling of metal frames, the cube, the partial cubes, the wheelchair, the chairs, the chalk squares on the ground. Svenja takes a metal chair from to outside of the cube. The dancers are remaining still, but for Charlie moving on the top bar, the others are caught in a commingulation of metal chairs, cubes, scaffolding. Charlie has moved onto a metal chair that is on 2 legs instead of 4. She sits on now. Curling back into the cube. The dancers are moving now. Through the cacophony and chaos of metal edges, angles and spidering scaffolding, it looks as though the dancers are trying to free themselves and the space. The wheelchair has rolled around from the back, now to the side and out of view. Dancers are carrying the metallic chairs out of the cube. Going towards us is one that is welded together. It seems to have overpowered Charlie. She moves to the ground on top of her, gradually rolling it off her. The space somewhat clear, Isolde reaches for the front bar of the cube and pulls herself upright. Svenja supports her to move onto all fours. Still supporting her, they crawl shoulder to shoulder. Making progress away from the cube and off towards us on the left. Meanwhile, Galen and Charlie lift the wheelchair out of the cube, setting it down on its side. They remove the top wheel. Galen dances off with it, curling herself around it as it rolls. They set the wheelchair spinning on its one wheel. The dancers are still. The only thing moving is the wheelchair, which is gradually coming to a stop. Now the dancers are as though rewinding their movements. Galen and Charlie replacing the wheel back on the wheelchair. Isolde and Svenja equally crawling back shoulder to shoulder towards the wheelchair until Isolde comes to sit back into it, supported by all three other dancers. Again we see Kathy in a wheelchair off to the side. All four dance at exit in a rolling circular movement, partnering each other. They roll towards steps and up a ramp. Kathy follows with the GoPro camera, so we see the world from her perspective. They go up past another space, another courtyard with flowers, and up again another ramp. Several series of ramps. Charlie, Grace and Amelie return to the cube to clamber up onto it and sit on its top bars. Charlie on the left corner, Grace in the middle and Amelie on the right. Abruptly, Charlie and Grace jump off and dance vigorously over the chalk-drawn squares, around the chairs, around the commingling of metal frames. Grace remains behind, watching. Charlie comes comes back to lift her down. Not quite. She hangs on the cube before jumping to the ground. They are dancing. Every so often, one dancer is suddenly pausing. Emily come to sit in the corners of 3 of the metal frames. Suddenly they run out. We see them coming up the steps and back into the dock theatre. The metal frames remain. Three metal frames and 3 chairs still visible at odd angles. We follow the way of Isolde and Kathy up the ramps that will lead us back into the dock. Back in the theatre, a rectangular projection appears, like a suspended window to the outside world. Now there are 2. These windows show different images. The first, on the left, is of a road. And a figure on a trampoline flashes in and out. Now the one on the left is rushing vegetation. The one on the right shows a head, arms, hair, leaves in a bathtub on the water's surface. These images flash on and off. The images now still, we see the audience coming back in. Sometimes a head moves past the projected image. Rushing vegetation and dark. Leaves and hair and a bathtub, rushing vegetation and a part of a hand. A hand and rushing vegetation, grass, green, yellow straw, the bathtub, a girl jumping on a trampoline. The sky. In slow motion, a girl jumping on a trampoline. The bathtub again, the leaves, the water, the hair, the grass. The bathtub. A hand through grass. A slow motion body jumping on a trampoline on a dull day. The bathtub, the leaves, the hair, the water. Sky. The body on the trampoline. The rushing vegetation. The bathtub. The hand through the grass. A thumb. The lights come up to show a dancer. It is Svenja, the dancer who wore the binding dress at the start. Isolde is behind her in the wheelchair to the left. Svenja is dancing slowly. We also see opposite Isolde Grace standing still. Svenja's dance is taking her slowly downwards to the floor, making wide arcs with her arms. She is gradually crouching down towards the floor, now on her knees. Isolde and Grace are still, while Svenja is now moving on the floor. A white t-shirt and a flowing grey trousers. Svenja has come to standing. The light is shadowy. Grace and Isolde move as more dancers enter. They are still. Now some move, some are still. In a colour scheme of whites and greys, greens and reds. Now all are moving more steadily, more fluidly. Isolde still, now she's moving. The dancers swoop and dive. They weave in swirling gusts around and through each other. They weave in swirling gusts around and through each other. They weave in swirling gusts around and through each other. Intensity building. Isolde in her wheelchair leans forward to dart through the dancers, arching backwards to break. A single arm sailing high to swivel her round in another dart, another gust of motion forward. Svenja seems tossed and buffeted by the building, whipping storm of dance around her. A sense of primal power in this building, synchronized energy of all the dancers in this dance. Dancers dancing, dancers being danced, arms, bodies, hair, whirling, whipping, red, blue, white, green, catching light, shadow, whipping and whirling. Isolde and another dancer in red have come to still, with a whipping motion back in motion. Stillness is pervading. Dancers are coming in to sit on the floor. The lights are going down. They are still. The lights are fading out into dark. The end. The dancers stand up. Svenja, Amelie, Grace, Isolde, Galen, Kathy. Amelie, greys and whites, red, green, 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 red and green. Two dancers in wheelchairs and they all move off the stage.